What's up, Internet? My name is Michael Cook, this is Blue Giant Media, and we're here to connect through gaming. Today, I want to kind of compare and contrast Space Base by John D. Clair, published by AEG, and Dice Forge by Regis, Bonnessee, and published by Libellud. The reason why I want to compare and contrast these games is because both of them are dice games in which you roll the dice and get something and have the possibility of getting something even when it's not your turn. They both have a little bit of engine building, they both accelerate to the finish, and I think, in my opinion, they both fill a kind of similar weight and kind of a gateway status. So I want to talk about what works well and what doesn't work for both of these games and which one I might like a little bit better. Alright, so here I have Space Base set up as you would see it for your board once the game has started. You've got a couple cards that you can choose from to start the games to kind of jumpstart things a little bit. And then on your turn, what you'll do is roll the dice, and then you could allocate those dice either as individual dice or as the sum of them together to activate, in this case, the 2. And you look at, on your roll, you look at the blue spaces. On your opponent's roll, you get to look at the red spaces. So I could allocate them as a 2 and a 5 to get 1 point and 1 money, or I could allocate them as a 7 to get 3 money. So you have that flexibility there, which is pretty cool. When your opponent rolls, though, so let's say this is my opponent's roll, and that works out very well for illustrative purposes, because whenever your opponent rolls, the same thing happens, but instead of considering your blue portion of the cards, you're going to look at the cards that you have tucked up here. So this would give me 1 point, or 1 money, 2 money, and that's on my opponent's turn. So you're able to get some stuff on your opponent's turn. So let's give an example. That maybe that was my opponent's turn. Let's say they went first, and then on my turn, I can roll these, and I've got 9 or 2 money. And let's say earlier in the game, I might want more money, but for the sake of illustration, I'll go ahead and say it's a 9 and upgrade my income. That means that I can never go below this, because let's say I'm going to buy this one for 2. I will take this card, replace it, take the one that was there, and tuck it underneath. Now, whenever you spend any amount of your money buying a new card on your turn, your money will all go down to 0 to end the turn. So even if I had 15 money and I only spent 10 of it, it's all going to go to 0, but then it does bounce right back to whatever your income is. So the further up your income is, then you can spend money and start the next round with a decent amount of money every single time, which is nice. The game is going to go until somebody gets 40 points. Points are going to be gained from these rocket symbols that are in blue, means that every time you activate that card, then you're going to get that many points. So if I have this in my 12 slot and I'm able to roll a 12, I'm going to get 9 points. And you can help that by having cards like this, which the green ones are able to activate on either your opponent's or your turn. So this one, if I happen to roll a 4, then I can put a charge on this, and then on either my turn or my opponent's turn, whenever there's a roll that happens, I can choose to spend this charge to take the sum of the dice and go 1 space further to the right. So if I've got a couple of those, then that makes it so, okay, even if I roll a 10, I can use 2 of these charges to bump it all the way up to a 12 and get more points. There's also even crazy things like this that go ahead and say if you are able to get 5 charges on there, then you win. So in a 4 or 5 player game, you only need to get 3 charges on there. In a 2 player game, you're going to need to get 4, and in a 2 or 3 player game, you're going to need to get all 5 charges on there. And that is pretty much the way you play the game. The only other thing here is there are these cards that basically close out one of your card spots, so that whenever you roll that number, let's say I bought this one, it's going to cost me 39, which is a lot. It's going to then block out my 11 space. So this would get turned over, this would sit here, I would get 13 points immediately, but for the rest of the game, whenever I roll 11, I'm not going to get anything. So I'm just going to want to take the 5 and the 6 rather than the 11. There's one for each slot, with the lower numbered ones being worth fewer points and costing less. And that's pretty much the game. In Dice Forge, you start with 2 identical dice. So on one you have a whole bunch of 1 money faces and 1 sun shard, and on the other you have 4 1 money faces, 1 2 point face, and 1 moon shard face. So on your turn and on everybody else's turn, every time it's somebody's turn, everybody will roll their dice. And based off of what you roll, you will get some points or money or sun or moon shards. Then, if it's your actual turn, you get to do one of two things. You can either make an offering by paying money and then getting new die faces to put into your dice, or you can go try and perform a heroic feat by spending your sun or moon shards to battle these different mythological beasts and get the appropriate benefits. So instead of having the exact same kind of 12 cards in front of you, now you have the exact same 12 different die faces that you can roll. And also, just like Dice Forge, no matter whose turn it is, everybody has a chance to get some things, or in Dice Forge you will get things. So I can go ahead and spend some of this 4 money. I can split it however I want, as long as I don't get 2 exactly identical die faces. So I can't use it to get 2 of these 3 money faces, but I could use it to get a 1 moon shard and 1 3 money face. So let's go ahead and say, for example's sake, that I went and I got this 6 money face for 4. I'll go ahead and spend my 4, and then I can choose any face on either of my dice, whether I want to try and combine them all onto one face or one die to make it extra good, or spread them out between the 2 dice is up to me. So I can go ahead and just pop that out, pop the new one in, then it's going to go on to the next person's turn. On that person's turn, I will also roll my dice. So here I would get 1, 2 victory points and 1 money. And in a 2-player game, you roll the dice twice on your turn. And then the other thing to consider is, as the game goes on, as you defeat some of these different monsters, some is going to give you a immediate effect, which is going to be shown by the little whirlwind type icon here. And some of them are going to give persistent effects, like this one right here, that has the gear right there. That means, because once you get these, you can get some points based off the top, then you flip it over, and anything that's still showing there is going to be a persistent benefit. So you can see it goes away on the immediate benefit cards. But this one says, and these take effect after you have rolled your dice. Then you look at any of your cards like this. This says you have the option to spend 3 money to get 4 victory points. And that's something that you can take advantage of. Some of them, like this one, will say you get your choice of either 1 money, 1 sun shard, or 1 moon shard. Some of them are going to let you roll 1 extra die for what they call a minor blessing, because a major blessing is rolling both dice, and get that benefit after you've done your normal roll or rolls in a 2-player game. So they all kind of do different things. Some of them will give you new die faces, like this one's going to give you a ×3 die face. So let's say I rolled like this, and this was ×3, that would mean I'd get 18 money. Well, I can't hold 18 money. Well, luckily, there's this card right here, which lets you get an extension to make it so you can hold at least 16 money. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do with the game, which is a whole lot of fun. The other thing that you can do is you have the option to spend 2 sun shards to take an extra action. So if you bought something and put it into your dice, I guess you don't put the things into your dice until the end of your turn, but if you had bought something, you can then spend 2 of your sun shards, if you have them, to come over here and then fight somebody or something like that. So you have some ability to chain together more actions. The only thing that I kind of don't like about that is I do wish, it just makes it seem like sun shards are way more valuable than the moon shards, which that is reflected over here in that they do cost more, but in practice I feel like I wish that was balanced a little bit differently. Like, okay, maybe it takes 2 sun shards, but it would take 3 moon shards since they cost less, or something like that. That way you kind of want both of them a little bit more. So you'll play through either 9 rounds in a 2 or 4-player game, or 10 rounds in a 3-player game. Some other things to consider: if you go here and your opponent wants to go there, they are allowed to go there. They will bump you out, and whenever you get bumped, then you get to choose one of your dice for another minor blessing of getting bonus from rolling one of your dice. You'll play through those rounds, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most points would be the winner. So in Space Base, only the active player rolls the dice, and based off of that, what everybody has put down in front of them for their engine, it determines what they're going to get. Whereas in Dice Forge, you roll your dice, whether it's your turn or your opponent's turns, and that is the source of your engine. So you don't necessarily have the exact same, I guess, probabilities as your opponent, but in both cases you are rolling dice and building your own engine, get stuff no matter whose turn it is. Like that on both counts. But I do think the Dice Forge does it better if, at least if you're like me, you like games that kind of reward you more frequently. Space Base, you have to kind of earn it maybe a little bit more, or work harder for it, I guess. I like the fact that in Dice Forge you get resources easier, more frequently. It's also a shorter game. So let's move on to that. Dice Forge is only going to be 9 or 10 rounds. You're going to finish much quicker. In my opinion, I've finished this game in as few as 25 minutes before with a 2-player game. I don't think I've had a game take more than an hour, whereas Space Base, I, at Gen Con, played a 5-player game, and it was torturous. There was a player who was extremely prone to analysis paralysis. I was playing with 4 people I'd never played with before, new people that I met. It took a good almost 2.5 hours, and honestly, I really badly wanted to get up and leave. But I knew that was really poor form, so I stuck it out, didn't complain at all, won the game. So it's not that I sucked at the game. I get the strategy. It's just, it did not work well for me. I since have played it a good 4 or 5 more times, and every single time I found myself either running out of time, whether maybe I tried to play it over lunch break, and I had a little over an hour, and it couldn't get done even with a 2-player game. Or I tried to play with my wife, or I tried to play even trying to sit there and, okay, I'm going to play solo and just see how long it takes. It still just took too long. So for me, it did not reward itself, or reward me well enough to keep my interest. Dice Forge, maybe for you, it rewards you too much, and you're just overwhelmed. I get too much stuff, it's too easy. That may be your preference, so take that for what it's worth. I, for one, much prefer the speed, the pace, how frequently you're rewarded with Dice Forge. The production quality of Dice Forge it's great. There's a phenomenal toy factor, the fact that you have those dice and you pop them off. I haven't played this game with anybody and failed to have somebody go, wow, that's really cool. Who thought of that? It's a really cool mechanism. It's something that I've seen kind of, I think, Roll for the Galaxy, the Rivalry expansion that's supposed to come out in a couple months. That is something that is going to utilize it as well, but there's only been a few games that have utilized the ability to kind of build your own dice, and it's really unique. The art is great, it's beautiful, the way you set the game up, it's sort of necessary. I can't imagine how much of a pain in the butt it would be to set the game up without the way they set the tray up, but the way you set the game up it's streamlined, it's smooth, there's not a lot of fiddliness. The only thing that's fiddly at all is that you have to kind of keep track of your resources, and sometimes if things get bumped, then your little cubes could come out of the tray. But on the other side, if you look at Space Base, you, again, instead of having, I think, 5 cubes that you have in Dice Forge, you have 3 cubes, but they aren't set in any little notches in the board, so they are even easier to bump. And the other side of things is those little cards, you try and turn them around and stick them onto the board. Usually you're going to kind of push other cards under the board too, and you have to kind of rearrange them. It's actually more fiddly. So component quality is it's way better. The production quality is way better. The art is not bad in Space Base, and I love space games, but the art is just better. The color palette is vibrant in Dice Forge. It's just, the table presence is way better. For replayability, I think that they're pretty evenly matched. Maybe Space Base might actually have a touch more replayability, just because there's a lot more variety in the cards, whereas with Dice Forge, you only have so much variety in who you can fight in any given game. So it's a little bit limited there. I'm very much looking forward to the expansion that I think is supposed to be a multi-part expansion that's coming out in the next month or two, where there's more multiple modules, kind of like 2 expansions within one box. So I'm looking forward to that quite a bit. It's supposed to add a lot of replayability, a lot of variability. To me, I've played the game a pretty decent amount, and I still just want more. It's a simple game, yet I find myself coming back to it. And it's a great gateway, just like Space Base is. Other than that, some updated die faces or changes in die faces could be really cool, but for me, just being able to put them in different places, how you can kind of put them all into one die, separate them. Do you want to go for a whole bunch of big numbers? Do you want to go for money? There's a lot of variability there. There's also variability in strategies in space-based, whether you want to try and build up your economy so you have more money every round, or do you want to build up a whole bunch of like a point engine, or do you want to build up a way to get a whole bunch of money so that maybe you start a little bit, I think that's pretty cool. I think it's well done. There's a lot of replayability on both parts. I don't think it's an enormous amount of replayability for either game, but I think it's relatively evenly matched there. So overall, I 100% give the edge to Dice Forge. I'm sure you could probably tell just by the way I spoke probably a good deal more about Dice Forge than I did about Space Base. Every time I started talking about Dice Forge, I kind of couldn't shut up. I really, really enjoy Dice Forge. It's a game that I thought was neat. Once I actually got a chance to play it, I loved it. It's definitely not in like a top 10 game for me or anything like that, but it's just solid. It's a blast. Every time I play it, it goes over well, and I enjoy it, and I find myself thinking, wow, that was a lot of fun. It never overstates its welcome. I've said that many times. It leaves me wanting more. I'm satisfied, thinking I got a chance to do a lot. So, absolutely love Dice Forge. Space Base is a game that I wanted to like so much. I thought it was going to fill a niche that I was kind of empty in my collection, and it just fell flat. I think it's a solid game. I think that it is not necessarily, it's definitely not a bad game, it's just not for me. That still objectively, I would give the edge to Dice Forge as well though. I think it's a better game. I think it's a lot more fun, I think it's a lot more accessible, I think it's a lot prettier, I think production quality is better, I think you're going to get more for your money, and I think that it's just a better overall system. I think Space Base has a lot of potential. I'm hopeful that the expansion makes it better, but I'm also not sure if I want to even bother keeping Space Base in my collection long enough to find out. So I have to actually weigh that right now, whereas I'm eagerly anticipating the expansion for Dice Forge and still playing it in the meantime. So that is a pretty big indicator for me as well. If you like what you see, please let me know in the comments section below. Let me know if there's any games that you might want to see compared and contrast. Let me know what your thoughts are. Tell me why I am completely wrong and Space Base is awesome, because I don't think it's a bad game. I just don't think it's for me. And I'd really love to see and read your input on Space Base. And let me know what you hated about Dice Forge, because I know that one thing that people will probably complain about most is that you get stuff too much, and maybe towards the end you feel like you've already killed everybody, and what are you going to do with that last round sometimes? So take that into account, let me know what you think, and if you're interested in either one of these games, they are available at MakarovaGames.com. Keep an eye out in the links for that in the description section. You'll also find some links to overviews for each of these games. And if you like what you see, like, share, and subscribe, and as always, have a wonderful day.